Hey everybody, International Master David Pruess here for Chess.com, and today we are going to look at a very excellent and memorable game. This is Fischer Najdorf Sicilian game. So let's go ahead a couple moves till we get to the opening variation. Putting the bishop on c4 against both e6 and a6 for black is a variation which Fischer pioneered and turned into a very interesting attacking idea. There were other people who played it, okay? There's a very famous attacking player, Velimirovich, who also played like this and, also played great games. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. Most chess ideas actually have, more than one parent. But Bobby really did a lot for turning this line into an exciting weapon against the Sicilian defense. And today we're going to see a classic game of his. And one of the things that makes this game so classic is that it sort of established a couple new ideas which people were able to use after him. So, for example, I myself have used the very ideas that we'll see in this game. And so have countless other chess players. So let's have a look at this game here. So this is standard position for the bishop c4, bishop b3 line against the Najdorf. And here the best move for black is bishop to e7, I'm pretty sure. Bishop to b7. Now, before I'd ever seen any Bobby Fischer games, I once had this position in a game, and I played bishop takes e6 here, which is not such a bad move. Once you get into this position, white has decent compensation, and I actually won the game. But not only that, not just me, but before Fischer, a lot of people, some other grandmasters had even played bishop takes e6 here. So the idea of sacking a piece on e6 was known, but look at the move which Fischer came up with in this position, which is much better than sacking on e6 immediately. Rook to e1 is a super, super powerful move by Bobby because black has trouble developing. If they play bishop to e7, white is going to play the sacrifice anyway. But now in a position like this, they've got a very, very good move available for their knight, which is to take the pawn on g7, then come back to f5. And you see for this type of position, the rook is perfectly placed on the e-file, either to break with e5 at some point or to play knight d5 at some point with your e-pawn, right? So the rook on e1 is a great tempo if he goes for a bishop takes e6 sack later. So with the rook on e1, he's getting ready to sack on e6 maybe. He's also getting ready to maybe sack on d5, for example. Should black play b4 here, he might be able to play knight d5, pawn takes d5, pawn takes d5, check. And now bishop to e7, knight to f5, and white would immediately win back their piece, plus they're ahead a pawn, and they've got a great position. Or the black king could take his chances through the middle of the board, which would be complicated, but we'll see stuff like that in a moment. So hold your horses. So rook to e1 is a very, very powerful move that Fischer came up with here. And the game continued knight b d7, bishop g5. Now he's just developing very, very, very quickly because he knows what black is up to. What black wants to do is they want to play knight c5 to guard the e6 pawn and permit themselves to then play bishop e7 and castle. Or perhaps to just trade off the bishop on b3 is another way to stop worrying about e6 and then play bishop e7 and castle. So Bobby knows that he's got about one move to get something going here before black plays knight c5. So he's developing quickly. Black plays h6 first and then goes knight c5. And now Bobby unleashed a really, really powerful move. He played bishop d5. So keeping the knight for now, right? Because it was the bishop that was going to get traded off. Now, in this position, black took the bishop, and they don't have a lot of other great options because Fischer's threat is to play b4, attacking the knight that defends the bishop on b7. So I think maybe the best thing black could do would play b4 themselves to stop white from playing b4, but then he can take, and bring his knight to d5. And white has a very good position. Very, very good. So bishop d5 was played, and Rubinetti takes the bishop, and Bobby takes back with check. So again, bishop e7 allows knight f5, just winning back the piece right away. right, if he blocks with the bishop. And in this position here, white's going to be up a pawn with a crushing position. So it's really, really not an option for black to give back the piece. You'll almost always in a competitive game see somebody just run their king out into the center, and they're going to take their chances with an exposed king and an extra piece, so at least they have some advantage going their way in the position. But now here is the key little detail that Bobby had to have as a follow-up to go for this sack, and that is this move b4, which is just beautiful with the idea of sort of trapping a knight on c5. And that is one of the really important things that I learned from this game and took away from it, was that even though it leaves the knight on c3 hanging, and even though black's usually the person playing on the queen side in the Najdorf, you have to stay aware for this possibility of a knight on c5 sort of losing its retreat square on d7. So b4, black has to play knight a4 so as not to lose the piece back. And after Bobby trades it and pushes c4, it's obvious that white is going to have more than enough compensation for the piece they've sacked. They're going to regain a second pawn. They're going to have 2 pawns against the piece. Black's development is bad, and their king is in the center, and white has the natural move c5 at some point to open up the king. So you can calibrate yourself right now, right? You want to know what is enough compensation for a piece. Look at this. This is more than enough. This is a winning attacking position for white. So black tucks the king, offers a queen trade in general. When you're trying to checkmate your opponent's king, you don't want to trade queens. Fischer comes back. Black kicks this bishop and goes to capture it. And now what should white do? Open lines to the black king. Okay? Don't need to think too hard about this. c5 from white. So black takes on d5, trying to get a queen trade. If they didn't do that, but took on g3, then Bobby would have time to play c6, threatening the queen and the bishop, right? So obviously his pawn is now better than a piece. So Rubinetti took on d5, and now there is the final combination, which is actually a sweet one if you want to try and find it yourselves. Of course, I always encourage you to pause your videos and try and guess some of these moves yourself, but you can also just enjoy it. I also encourage you to just enjoy it. So the rook comes to e8 check, queen a4. The king is caught in a diagonal crossfire because black didn't quite have the time to capture the bishop yet. He blocks, and Fischer takes it, and black resigns. If the queen takes, then white can play rook to d1 check. The king has to move off of defending the queen. White takes the queen and wraps up in a move or two with checkmate here pretty easily. There's several ways to checkmate in 2 moves. Or if black tried to take this rook, then white could win with rook to e1 check, king back here, and then knight b4 check, and pick up the queen. So in this position here, black just resigned. They're not able to take the knight. They're not able to move the king off of this diagonal. So they're just going to lose on the next move. A terrific game by Bobby. And I'm going to do a quick follow-up video where I'm going to show 2 games that were played that are directly derivative from this game here. So they won't necessarily teach you all that much more, but they're really sweet, cool games that look good, and they show how chess players are able to learn a lot from the people who come before them. So it really shows the impact of, Bobby plays a game like this, and that means like 100 people are able to sort of replicate some of those ideas or use them in their games. Or actually, 100,000 people once everybody on YouTube watches this video. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you around on Chess.com.